I go.
Oh.
As I say, road clock's right, it's right twice a day, right?
Right. Well,
I have,
you know.
I got,
10% when it doubles every 7 years.
I have my own health issues.
Oh.
I don't want any delay.
No, you don't.
So how long you been there?
That's where we are.
How long you been there?
It's cool, man.
Okay.
Hello there. Hi, welcome. Come on in.
Well, thank you. I see you again.
Well,
Okay. So you know about the University of Michigan Retirees Association?
Oh, yeah.
Join us in the front row.
No, I haven't gone, well, part of the problem is.
I don't think there's anything scary about it.
Yeah, I had a place before, so I was gone, for months at a time. So I haven't gone. Oh, no, I was. I was too right. Who's the chairman? Because Mike Helsinki is really involved. I don't know.
This is kind of a closer look at your new family.
Driving down there the other day.
That was fantastic.
No, I was, Mike is, you know, I was, the last time.
Oh, okay. Oh, that was a while ago.
Yeah, that was a couple years ago.
Jim's still very active.
Yeah,
Probably bad.
well, Mike Helsinki.
Early 80s, somebody else drove him.
Administrator. And
Hello.
I thought he was.
Hey, folks, we got a couple more people just pulled in. We'll get 1 or 2 more minutes to get started, if that's okay.
Who's zooming this one? Oh, you mean,
Just wanted to talk to me about
Yeah.
the whole area.
yeah, but part of the reason to go.
Know this much.
It is. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just surprised how many nurses. there are. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I've been, promoted. I don't know. I probably been a half dozen times, but I haven't. I haven't.
Well, there's a really rich human farming history.
Yeah, because we gotta make
From like the.
Yeah, I mean, it always.
But you know, I think it's like everything. Rotary or whether it's other stuff.
Well, the thing with you is my wife's a problem. So that's a problem.
Well.
Yeah, I shot all my up now, you're right.
And all of it's like, you
No,
know,
exactly. Well, my wife. She worked in the property presence office. She was, she worked for that time.
I knew that was going. I'm not
Yeah,
surprised.
the good or the bad, whether it's good or the bad, yes.
He was a
Very, very big project. Okay.
So she worked.
I'm waiting for work, but she caught on my, the cash mine last inspection. She told me I graduated.
They're never in a hurry on your deposits. It can take a while.
Oh, well, I'm calling off. It may be the same person I met actually there.
She just retired.
No,
No, I can't remember last name. But she had, well, you know, the guy from HR.
Yeah, because they can go in and.
Hi, everybody. I'd like to thank everybody for coming out tonight. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Andy Hood, Scio Township's fire chief. I've been here about 3.5 years. I'll give you a little background on myself. Tonight, I want to have just really an informal meeting. I know a lot of folks have questions. I've got about a 10-minute PowerPoint, 15-minute PowerPoint I want to run through, kind of give you some of the talking points. And then anyone that's got questions, I'd love to hear them. I'd love to answer them. We've got folks online on Zoom too. As I said, my name's Andy Hood, Scio Township Fire Chief. I came to Scio Township about 3.5 years ago, actually the same week COVID hit the US, so it was kind of an interesting transition. My background, I started in the late 90s as a volunteer firefighter for my hometown, Armada, it's in northern Macomb County. From there, I spent about 3.5 years before I got my firefighter 1 and 2 certification, paramedic certification, and became a career firefighter for Metro Detroit Fire Department. That department, right now, they're running 3,300 calls a year. They're firefighters, they're paramedics, they do the transport for the community. I retired out of there as a battalion chief, which is essentially the day-to-day officer in charge. So I manage day-to-day operations and manage incidents. I also have a bachelor's degree in fire service administration, associate's degree in fire science. That's my background. With us here today, Brandon Sears, assistant fire chief. He's our fire marshal as well. He's out in the community, making sure our commercial buildings are safe. And Terry Sauve on the Zoom. She's our administrative assistant. One neat note, if you forget our email addresses, if you do fire@sciotownship.org, you actually email all three of us. So one of the three of us will get back to you. So I'm gonna jump right in. What is Scio Township asking voters to approve? It's really two questions. The first being an operating question and the second being a capital. And I wanna talk about them backwards. The capital question first, no more than 0.75 mils to fund financing of a fire station, new equipment for that fire station and property. If the voters approve question two, we will have a mechanism to pay back bonds. We'd have to draw bonds to construct the fire station. We have the township owns property on Wagner at Liberty. This would be the mechanism to pay back a loan to build a fire station. Operating question is question one. Currently today, voters have authorized 1.35 mils. This would allow that limit to go up to 3.75 mils. That's to staff fully the Zeeb station and staff the Wagner station. I say gradual implementation because right now it's tough hiring all over the world, US, and it's tough to hire firefighters as well. I anticipate no more than 3 to 6 firefighters a year we'd be able to hire. And as we hire firefighters, our costs would go up. So we gradually raise that assessment every year until we have adequate staffing in both our stations. This will generally increase as the second station is built and we begin to staff it. I guess anywhere between 7 and 10 years before we're fully staffed. So generally, if voters approve both questions, we'd assess an operating millage that would, or assessment that would generally go up over time. And we would figure out what it takes to pay back any loans, the loans we get for a building and the capital question and assess that levelly until that loan's paid off. An important thing to note, if we approve the operating question, but not the capital, there will be some improvements in the fire service. We'll be able to add a 4th person to the Zeeb Road Fire Station, but we can't build a 2nd fire station. We don't have the funding for it. If the capital question is passed, but not the operating, you'll see no change at all. We'll still have 3 firefighters on duty a day. So why is Scio Township asking voters this question? One of the reasons, increasing population. We took a look at some census data going back to 1990, and if we exclude Dexter from that number, Scio had about 9,000 residents in 1990. Today we're at 17,500. Increasing response times. In 1990, much of the uplands didn't exist. There were no homes there that I'm aware of. I think those late 90s into the 2000s were built, if I understand correctly. So as those homes got built and respond from our Zeeb Road Fire Station to emergencies in that area of the township, it's a significantly longer response time. Our goal is to have a response time of under 6 minutes, 90% of the time. Today, we meet that about 45% of the time. And our current average response time is 10 minutes and 33 seconds to all call types. Additionally, increasing call volumes. In the year 2000, we did 827 calls. I'm projecting this year we're gonna hit about 1,600. So what do Scio residents have for fire service today? Today we've got 3 firefighters on duty. They're at the Zeeb Road Station, our only fire station. And they're assigned to either the fire engine or the tanker. You got it, Brandon?
I'll take care of it.
Thank you. Sorry about that. So we have 3 firefighters assigned to our Zeeb Road Fire Station. It's basically center of the township. If a fire comes in Scio Township, we take our fire engine out. I need my 3 firefighters to be able to drive to the scene and put a hose line in service. We got a medical emergency or a car accident. Our 3 firefighters get on the fire engine, drive out to the scene. We've got medical equipment. We've got vehicle extrication equipment, everything we might need to help manage an emergency. We're relying on off-duty folks or our paid-on-call staff, which is dwindling, to bring our tanker to our scenes. When we do have a fire in an area that doesn't have hydrants, which is a lot of Scio Township, we automatically get a water tanker from Dexter dispatched right away. So we have our 3 firefighters going there, 2 firefighters from Dexter, and they're bringing 3,000 gallons of water. Where do our emergencies occur? Shouldn't be a surprise, but most of our emergencies occur in the more densely populated areas of Scio. This is a heat map from 2022. Shows our emergencies. The red areas of higher numbers of calls. And you can see some of these gray or very light areas have lower numbers of calls. Lose a few more. Uplands, pretty high popular number of calls up and down Wagner Road here, and the east end of Jackson. All the way up and down Zeeb and Jackson area, up into the Polo Fields of the subdivisions, Liberty Road, our Scio Farms community, and up and down Baker are where we're mostly visiting. A lot of these areas we do meet our response time goals. Our fire station's right here, so we can get to most of this in 4 minutes. Scio Farms, we're right on the edge of our 6-minute response time goal. And with the benefit of I-94, most of the time we get over to Baker Road in adequate time as well. Areas we don't meet our response time goals, once we start getting down into the Liberty area, east side of Wagner, and uplands. So if approved, what would this fund? If voters approve both questions, first thing we would do is fully staff our Zeeb Road Fire Station. That'd bring 3 people on duty, we'd have 4 staff today. This would allow us to build a new fire station and staff it on Wagner Road near Liberty, and planning for the next 20 years. Folks who drive around the community today kind of see how our west side has really grown. We got new subdivision going in, a lot of apartments going in there, businesses going in, and those all increase need to the township. I hope that we're able to purchase a plot of land that we can build a station on the west side of the township. Our data does not suggest we need it. However, that land's going fast, and I'd like to have a chunk set aside so that a future fire chief is ready when it does need a fire station. And additionally, I want to purchase a piece of property to replace our Zeeb Road station. That building's life expectancy is probably 50 years or so. And I'd like to have a plot of land when that building needs to be replaced 20 plus years. Not my problems to worry about. I intend to be well retired before then, but I want to set this department up for success. So if approved, what would Scio residents get? We'd have 2 fire stations to begin with. Each one would be equipped with a fire apparatus. There'd be a ladder truck as our primary response out of our Wagner Road station, and an engine out of our Zeeb Road station. When those stations go to a rural area where there's no water, again, that primary vehicle would come out of the station. It would be backed up by a water tanker from the other station. All our vehicles are licensed to respond to medical emergencies, so we'd be able to handle medical emergencies as well. We'd staff 1 rescue with 2 firefighters. Its primary responsibility would respond to medical calls. May be assisted by an engine or ladder on higher priority calls. So if someone was having a heart attack or chest pain, we'd send more than just the rescue. If it's a minor medical emergency, the rescue would be able to take it and still leave a fire engine in the station to respond to a second call or a fire in the community. This would be licensed to transport, and we'd work with Huron Valley Ambulance, our ALS provider, together. Oftentimes, they're slow to get calls because they're busy and they're down staffing. If we can put this vehicle in service and take away some of those lower priority calls, like the twisted ankle or the dislocated elbow, that they don't need an ALS unit for, we can leave that ALS unit available for someone who might have a heart attack. We'd work together with HVA to improve the service to everybody. And lastly, we'd have a battalion chief position. That's the officer in charge. He or she would be the senior officer, manage the day-to-day operations, and serve as the incident commander on larger incidents. Our car fires, vehicle accidents, building fires, anything of that nature. The Zeeb Road Station, Approximately 60% of the calls would be in the first two area there. It'd be staffed with a fire engine and 3 firefighters and the battalion chief. They'll put 4 people on duty there, and that's an important number I'll talk about in a minute. Wagner Road Station, 40% of the calls in the community would be the first two area there. I would have a ladder truck with 3 people and a rescue with 2 firefighters. And this actually has the area with our largest number of responses outside our 6-minute goal, so it would greatly reduce the response times to that area. I mentioned 4 people at a station. There's a MIOSHA regulation called 2 in, 2 out. That requires that if we're gonna go into an environment that's immediately dangerous to life and health, that could be a fire, that could be a gas leak, could be a carbon monoxide incident, and any types of those calls, we have to have 4 firefighters on scene. Our first station would get there, we'd meet our 2 in, 2 out requirements, and be able to go in, rescue folks who might be in the carbon monoxide incident, figure out where the gas is leaking from and contain that, or if it's a fire, go in and start working on a fire. Would reduce response times to the community, add redundancy. As an example, if our Z Road Station is out on a call up off of Huron River Drive, there's no one left to respond anywhere else in Scio Township. We're relying on our neighbors if they're available. If we have a second station, well, our Z Road Station is up on Huron River Drive and a car accident comes in right here at Zeeb and Jackson, our Wagner Road Station would handle it with no help from mutual aid. Our folks would handle it. And it would give us the ability to respond appropriately to higher acuity calls. Our heart attack calls, we want to put 7 firefighters on scene. Car accident, we're going to need 2 engines, a rescue and the chief. There's a lot of these calls that we're under responding to now that we can respond to appropriately. So here's what your staffing would look like. Currently, our Z Road Station has a engine with 3 firefighters and that's it. Proposed, there'd be an engine at each station with 3 firefighters each, a rescue with 2, and then our officer in charge. Primary coverage area with 1 station, all of Scio Township was covered by the Z Road Station. The area in yellow on the map to the right would be covered primarily by our Wagner Road Station. And any call that requires more than 1 station to respond would obviously get both stations to respond. This is just an overlay of the heat map and coverage area comparison. So if you see some of our higher concentrations of calls in these areas here, you notice that they're going to be covered primarily by our Wagner Road Station. Areas up here would probably see about a 60-second response time difference in good weather, probably a little more in inclement weather. It's actually would be almost identical miles in time to get to this point, except coming from our Z Road Station, half of this is an unpaved road. In the winter, we're a lot slower, and when it's raining and such, we're a lot slower to get there. Here's a brief timeline implementation. If voters approve this, winter 2024, we can be complete with our building plans, order vehicles, hire 3 firefighters. Probably spring of 2025, break ground on a fire station. Spring of 2026, probably open a fire station and hire more firefighters. And then each year after, hire another 3 firefighters per year until we get up to staffing. And cost implementation. This is an estimate. I'm not showing all the detail because there's so much that goes into it. But to operate 1 fire station, including replacing vehicles, replacing apparatus, the electric bill, the gas bill, pumping the septic tank, everything that goes into it, is about $500,000 a year just to have the station open and running. And I figure addition of 3 firefighters between wages, benefits, and gears and equipment needed is about a $450,000 a year commitment. If approved, how would this impact this winter's tax bill? If nothing's approved, the existing 1.35 mil assessment is there, and that's what will be assessed. Bring us in about $2.225,000. And that's about $270 for the average homeowner. If it is approved, we gradually increase the operating assessment. I'm estimating about 0.5 mils. I'd ask the board for capital, bring us in just over 3 million in revenue. And it would bring an average homeowner's cost up by about $100 a year. I like to break it down by month. That's how I pay my bills, my cell phone bill, my electric bill. So we're going from $22.50 a month to $31 a month. That's for the average homeowner. Obviously, there's homeowners much higher and obviously much lower, as this is an average. And actually our median and average are within dollars of each other. So it's a pretty good representation of the middle of Scio Township. And where can we get more information? That email address, fire@sciotownship.org. Again, that goes to all three of us. We have a bunch of information on our website, sciotownship.org.fire, and you can call. That's all I have for you folks, and I'd love to hear the questions you have and comments and concerns. And
Do you have
please.
numbers of like how many fires, how many medical emergencies in the past, what, 6 months, year, whatever you've got?
Yeah, do we have that online, Terry? So I will say that our comparison, our breakdown of runs is similar to most other fire departments regionally. Obviously, you have some bigger departments like your Detroit or Flint who do a lot more fire calls, but any suburban department, we're right in line with response numbers. Try to dig that out and find it for you real quick while we're thinking of it. I also, if anyone's interested, I built a calculator to show what it would cost. Find your address, put in your taxable value, and it showed the difference.
That's on your website too.
That is not. Email us at fire. I can get that to you.
You can look at fire department statistics.
Does it got the breakdowns?
So Chief,
Yes, sir.
sort of a related question, we're talking on the one hand about a tax assessment increase.
Mhm.
I'm up in the northeast corner, so my hazard insurance, my ISO rating, our neighborhood is rated at 10+. It's the worst you can be. My hazard insurance, I was told that if we could manage to get that down to, they do a bracket now for insurance. So they call it the 3-5 bracket.
Okay.
So if we could go from the 9, 10+ rating down to the 3 to 5 bracket, that would save on average about 30% on your hazard insurance. That's a lot of money. And that would more than offset, now I'm not agreeing necessarily with these numbers, the increase, but if those were the numbers, they should be offset if you could actually get an improved ISO rating. Now, we've mentioned that over the year in all this discussion, but we really haven't, we don't have that on as a metric, as a target, as a goal, an objective. We seem to be satisfied with the hydrogen, which isn't even a great rating, even in the hydrogen areas. We can do better with even in those areas.
I agree.
So I'm not a commercial taxpayer, and I don't know if anybody can speak to the commercial hazard insurance. But from a residential hazard insurance, if we could achieve that kind of ISO improvement, we would more than be able individually to pay our share of the tax increase. So what I'm concerned about is the projected timeline doesn't really allow the benefit. There's no benefit. What's in it for me? I hate to say it that way, but I am not going to see an improved ISO rating in my neighborhood with all of this money spent. Pure and simple.
So if I could touch on ISO for just a few minutes for you. That is something, a lot of what you see today came from the Fire Services Guidance Committee. It's a committee that was formed almost over a year ago now. to research this issue, and we have several members here today. And ISO rating was one of the things we dug deep into. Unfortunately, not every insurance company gives it the same weight. ISO is a component of Risk Analytics, and what they do is they go out and they rate your fire department. And they do this to every fire department in the country, and they do it every 5 years now. It used to be 10 years. They rate how often you train, your deployment analysis, how many firefighters on duty, how many firefighters make it to a scene, how your water supply is. Tons of information. And again, email me at fire@Scio Township. I'll give you your ISO rated report.
This is on, it's on the site, yeah. So this is, I think, what it looks like, if you want.
So
Not familiar with it, that's it.
the problem saying that that's a definitive, and I agree with you, it measures risk. But some insurance companies weigh it heavily and some weigh it lightly. I think one of the insurance companies we reached out to was State Farm maybe. And they base their rates on road miles from a fire station to your house. They don't even include ISO. Others, ISO's golden ticket. That's the most important thing.
And it should be, actually.
I'm not gonna, I agree with you. I did have one resident reach out. He's more than 5 road miles from the fire station, a true southeast section of Scio Township, Kensington Wood subdivision, and he wanted to know what our ISO rating was because his homeowner's insurance went from $860 a year to $1,700 or $1,600 or somewhere in that line. And it's because he's more than 5 road miles from the fire station. We built this fire station for him. I know his insurance is gonna drop significantly.
Yeah, so my suggestion would be to do a little bit more promotion on this piece of it. And the fact that it's, some insurers are just going on road mileage is not fair. Because most of them don't do it that way. And as a result, that southeast section, he might see a great benefit. I'm not gonna see a single one myself. It's because it's a combination of, can I get the water there? Do I have the manpower, people power to get it there? Am I gonna get the equipment there within the response time? And oh yeah, by the way, they gotta go this far.
Yep.
So the smart insurance companies, and maybe somebody knows more about it and here can say it differently, are not just going on road miles.
I would have loved to have an insurance underwriter on this committee.
Well, maybe not.
True. Is that, do you have more comments, sir?
Yeah, no, I think I'd like to see more, what's the benefit, what's in it for me? If I have a heart attack in my place, HVA is gonna be there. We've already had that kind of stuff going on in my neighborhood. Yeah, I know they've got manpower issues just like everybody else, but last winter, when I talked to you in March, I asked who was responsible for the HVA contract and their performance and their issues, and you weren't aware, you didn't know.
There is no one in charge.
And there's nobody in charge, as it turns out. Doesn't make any sense at all. And by the way, I think the same is true with the Washtenaw Sheriff. Right? So, just like fire prevention, get in there, let's head this thing off. Exit plans, fire detection, fire prevention, all that you're gonna be doing. Similar on really on the residential side. Somebody needs to take up on the HVA contract and discussions and play it, get a more important feel for that. I applaud us for trying to get in front of this EMS thing, but you get one fire call, one EMS call, we're out of action. That's just not gonna be able to help us, do that. And then we're gonna have to be relying on old Ann Arbor, and we're kind of overdrawn at the well there already, right?
Already,
So,
yep.
et cetera.
Yep.
So, just like fire prevention with the commercials, we got to get in front of these contracts and performance with HVA. They're good people.
Absolutely. We work great with them. We work very well with them. Ma'am, to answer your question, did you ask about our statistics? I've got it up there for you, last 18 on.
Which are actual fire calls?
The top line, fires, that encompasses all of our fire calls. And I'll say that excludes some nuisance calls, nuisance fires, like for example, burning complaints and things where we go out and just have folks put out the fire. That's just hostile fire situations.
One a week, basically.
Ballpark, yeah, sir.
Yeah, you know, one thing that's really being missed in this whole thing is prevent reoccurrence. You know, how do we make the business and the home more safe? You know, I mean, I'm guessing, and maybe I'm wrong, the bulk of your fires in the house are in the kitchen, maybe I'm wrong.
That's
Or
pretty
a lot of
accurate
that.
statistic.
You know, but are people really going like to electricity and induction stoves, and getting rid of gas and, you know, the thing, and are people going to metal roofs, you know, things like that? It's just not happening. How can we instill in new developments and new construction, the proper way of doing things? You know, I mean, we've got attics that's full of blown in cellulose insulation rather than mineral wool or something that's fire resistant, but we're not doing it. How can we put into the codes, you know, all the things that should be done? You know, I mean, I wanna lessen your load.
So you're not gonna like this answer, but that's your Michigan legislature. They adopt the International Building Code, but remove certain components of it because they found them too costly to the builders. Residential sprinklers and the IFC have been required, or the residential sprinklers in the International Building Code have been required, but have been removed by Michigan. On the business end, Assistant Chief Sears is out in the community every single day, meeting with business owners, inspecting their buildings, and helping make them safer for businesses. Eventually, I'd like to see us offer service where we're getting into residential homes, where we can check smoke detectors for folks, put up carbon monoxide alarms, and make sure yours are working.
Get rid of natural gas and, you know, have a safe, a reasonably new, you know, distribution system in your house. And,
Sure.
you know,
All great
these are
things.
things I've done, you know, and these are things that if you report them to the insurance company, your rates will go down. You know, I mean,
Yes,
I'm not against insurance companies, but, you know, how do we mitigate the risk, you know, to them? So these are things that we've really gotta look at better.
Yep, I agree. Ma'am?
One real quick question and then a second big one.
Sure.
I live in the top northeast corner of Scio Township, right off of Huron River Drive.
Yep, give me a street.
West Street off of Railroad.
Okay,
East
yep,
High, up
got
in
it.
there.
Yep.
I was always under the impression that when you guys came out to do a fire up there, that you tapped our wells. No, you don't?
Nope.
You need a tanker truck.
Yep, we have a tanker truck carrying between 2,500 and 3,000 gallons of water.
Oh.
And we get,
I didn't know
on a typical, and I hate to use this term because it minimizes
It's
feelings.
very, yeah.
What we call a significant or a major fire. We have minor fires that are very disruptive to residents, but don't require a lot of resources to address.
Yeah.
A major fire, we have 3 water tankers coming from our neighbors, and we typically get ours on the road as well. So we have 4 tankers between 2,500 and 3,000 gallons a minute, circling around, water reserve.
Okay, well, that's something that I didn't know,
Yeah,
living on a well.
I think, sorry, but that's, I think that's another key point, you know,
Yeah.
water delivery.
Yeah,
Because just
exactly.
3,500 gallons, it's 3,500
pretty
gallons a
quick.
minute, fight a going fire.
Yeah, that goes fast.
So my second question is a little bit more hefty. And I know that you're not responsible for any of this, so I'm not doing anything, but there is ongoing, for quite some time, discomfort with the way the township has been handling finances. And I have friends come to me and they say, this is gonna be money coming into the township, and they've done, pardon me, a pretty piss poor job at managing funds. So they say, how do we know that all this money is gonna be handled any better than any of the other money that has not been handled well for the last X number of years? I don't know if you can address that or not, if that's a township question, but who would manage these new incoming funds?
So let me, I'll give you 2 parts to an answer.
Okay.
First of all, through the township board, I'm responsible directly to the citizens of this township. If you call, stop in my office, I will show you my budget. I will show you where every dollar's been spent. I can pull up every single bill we've paid. I can show you the money coming in and coming out. Number two, the township has recently hired an outside consultant to serve as finance director. So they now have a CPA who's, I think, 3 days a week in the building here and overseeing finances.
Thank you.
The funds are restricted too. Want to talk about that for a minute?
Sure, absolutely. So this question is based on Public Act 33. There are two things that Public Act 33 can be used for: a police department or a fire department. So it cannot go to roads, it can't go to paths, it can't go to anything else. And Scio's chosen to further restrict it to fire operations only, and that's operating the fire department, or capital needs of the fire department, which is buildings, new equipment for new buildings, and land for future expansion when needed.
Thank you.
Ma'am?
You didn't, I have a couple questions. Do you have volunteer fire? Man on?
Yes, can I answer that one first?
Yes.
Yes, so currently, we're classified as a combination fire department. We have full-time staff and paid-on-call staff. When I started here, 2020, we had 9 full-time staff, 9 paid-on-call staff. Since I've been here, we've been able to hire 1 paid-on-call firefighter. He's left already for a full-time job, and I've had 4 others leave for full-time career jobs. We're down to 3 folks, only one of whom lives in Scio. In fact, one lives in Chelsea, one lives in West Bloomfield. Neither of them are making it back for fire. And we do have 1 resident who does come back. So we're primarily reliant on our full-time staffing. In fact, there's this report up here. It says blue binder here, Emergency Services Consulting International, the township in probably 2017 commissioned this report. There's copies there, please take one. And one of the findings from ESCI was, actually, let me read it. I was looking at this earlier because I was expecting this question to come up. Page 1 in its major findings. Finding 2, the practice of relying on paid-on-call personnel responding from home or work to increase staffing levels for emergency response is no longer a viable option for the department. This was 2018, consulting firm made that. I'd have to say I concur with their assessment based on my experience here and in my previous history.
You mentioned that you wanted to purchase property west. Isn't this fire department west?
So Scio goes all the way to Parker Road, down Jackson, somewhere in the Baker or Jackson area, major intersection. I'd love to have a piece of property so that someday, if the need arises, we could put a fire station there.
What about north? That seems to be a need.
So I think probably the replacement for our Zeb Road station, provided 15 or 20 years from now, we have one on the west side of the township, should go north and east. That'd give us a little better accessibility to the far northeast side of the site.
Just an aside, do you know if, I have a couple more questions. Do businesses that are coming into Scio Township, is there a requirement for them to have an AED?
That I don't know.
Not yet,
Okay.
I can say that.
Well, there you go. Here's a new business owner in Scio.
We just completed a building and that's not required by the planning commission in the township, unfortunately.
I would encourage you to get one.
And then, are all of these that you had up, your runs for the year, do those, was there, I didn't notice, but it's listed assistance, so when Dexter has a fire and you go out to help them, so are those listed or is that an additional?
No, those are counted under the fire category. So those include times we go and come.
Do you help Dexter?
Dexter
You
helps us, we help Ann Arbor, Ann Arbor helps us, Chelsea.
Okay. So you go every day.
Sir?
Could you just go, your second to last slide with the money thing is a big issue. I got a flyer in the mail that said that, you know, that used the same $400,000 assessment issue and had a $11,000 number attached to it over 10 years, which is, you know, a little over $1,000 a year. And your numbers say $100 a year difference. That's a substantial
Is this the slide?
delta.
Based on market
Yes.
value or taxable value?
That's taxable value.
So taxable value would be $11,000 by the end of the 10 years,
No.
or however that they were
I believe
calculated.
that's cumulative for 10 years, all 10 years
Right.
combined,
Based on market or taxable?
based on tax paid.
Taxable.
So, yeah, I did look at that, and I believe, and I think Mr. Boyle's confirmed that, but that's cumulative over the next decade.
That's
the increase.
assuming that the tax increase is implemented at 1/10 a year for all 10 years. So it accumulates at 1/10 a year, 230% increase, 23% increase per year, each year for 10 years. And then at the 10th year, you have the highest rate of tax increase. But during the years, it goes from 10% of the highest rate to 100% of the highest rate. And then the $11,000 is the cumulative tax paid by the average homeowner.
So what wasn't that put into the, you know, on the ballot, that won't increase by more than a certain percentage per year?
So,
I mean, you have 4 mills or whatever it is, it's going to happen faster than that. People are not going to turn down money if it's available. It ain't going to happen.
So the process that we would arrive to get an actual assessment rate, we would project what our needs will be for the next year. And just as an example, say, hey, we've got 2 stations operating. I hope to hire 3 firefighters next year. Our accounting department would add those costs into the budget. We would then take that budget to the township board. The board would look at it. We'd have a public hearing. Mailer would go out to the residents. All the residents would be able to come in and have input and see exactly what that is. Yeah, unfortunately, it's a little tougher.
Again,
Yeah.
not how much, it's how much a month, right? So if those numbers are right, we're going from $270 a year, $270 a year to $370 a year, which is $2 a week. 2 times 50 is $100
In the first year.
And
in the first year.
I would agree that $11,000 number does look scary, but I compared
That's why it
that.
was put on, it said vote against it, so that they were trying to make it scary.
I compared that to some of my household bills. For TV and internet, I pay $200 a month. That's $48,000 over that same time period I pay.
Yeah, exactly. It's cumulative.
But the real number is $2 a week.
Yes. You still have more questions? I apologize for.
Okay, what's gonna be the second?
$4 a week,
What's gonna be the third year?
$6.
$6 a week. And the fourth year?
That is if you
So
have.
it's going up by,
$100,000
it's going up by whatever, if
Which
you
is not
put in 10% a year per year for 10 years. It's going, whatever you start out with per year, it's gonna go up by that amount each year cumulative.
So you're up,
So with
according to the numbers that were laid out, that would be well over 1,000 to 1,500
Over 10
years at the annual rate at the end of that period.
At the end of the 10-year period.
And then the cumulative is a scary number.
Right.
Are you taking into account how much, with all the new building that's going on and people moving into Scio Township over the next 10 years, you may have a surplus?
So some of that was taken into account coming to the final number. And I will say that if growth projections are higher than the committee estimated, the assessment rate would be lower because there'd be more taxable value in the township.
Oh, so this
Yes.
will go up and down,
Yeah.
okay.
One point though, you're using 400,000
Correct.
As an average home.
Yep, $400,000 sold today,
Correct.
$200,000 taxable value.
Okay, because that's closer because, talking with, Andrea last year, the Ann Arbor part of Dexter, there's about 800 million in taxable value. And I think it's 4,450 homes, works out to be about 187 for Ann Arbor is the average homeowner. And for the Dexter half, it's 179 or something like that. So the average house in Ann Arbor is less than 200, the average house is less than 200,000. So taxable value, not market value,
Yeah.
taxable value.
Yeah.
So
Right.
those numbers are actually, that's the taxable value you're using at 400. Yeah, okay, taxes.
If
And
400
so
is.
excuse me, just a second.
Go ahead.
My guess is who's ever putting together this 11,000 is not using an average for Ann Arbor of 189.
No, I'm gonna disagree. The $400,000, as I understood it, is the market value.
Right.
Not the taxable value. The
The
taxable
market value
value is
has nothing to do with what
200,000.
you
That's
pay
how,
taxes on.
what's
Right.
that?
The market value has nothing to do with what you pay taxes on. We pay tax on
Yeah,
a
yeah.
taxable value.
Well, the taxable value is designed to be 50% of the market value.
In year
Well,
one.
That's the goal, okay? So that does have everything to do with the market value. I disagree with
Well,
you.
but the average
No.
household,
That's not true. It depends on
Parcel.
how long you've had your house.
yes. So the average parcel,
Right.
Totally depends on how long you had your house.
My guarantee the Wings house is probably, the taxable value is probably
Right.
100,000.
Well, the taxable value can be less if you've had your house and the values have gone up at above the rate of inflation, which is capped
The
at
max it can
5%.
go up is by headly is 5%, and we just had that this year. It's
Right.
more like 3% or 2%. So
Average
your
annual rate of
taxable
inflation.
value, if you've been in your house for 20 or 30 years, is not your market value. It's much less than that.
Maybe a third of it.
Yeah, about a third, I would say.
For many folks, yeah.
That's why
Well,
the chart I have
well, when you
shows
say it's not the
average-
market value,
Average for Ann Arbor.
it has gone up at the rate of inflation. Because the rate of inflation has been less than
capped
5%. Well, let me finish my
at-
sentence, please. It's gone up at the rate of inflation. The average annual rate of inflation for the last 20 years has been about 2.5%.
Right.
So now, my point was, the chief food is that the expense for the fire departments, inflation over the last 10 years, cumulative is 25%. Inflation, the cost increase for the fire department in the last 10 years is 250%. So that's my issue, and I put that out,
Why are we
and I
doing
put that out in
cumulative?
the letter that I published.
And I'd
Why are
like,
you using cumulative?
I'd like to address it. Mr. Boyle is absolutely correct.
That's not a fair assessment.
From 2010 to 2020, expenditures by the fire department have gone up 250%. Our staffing's gone from 4 to 12. There's the reason for that. When we increase full-time staffing cost, we expect the cost to go up.
In 2000, we were running the fire department like we were in 1900, in like 1950 or 1970 or 1980. There had been no progress in the fire department, basically until you came.
I can attest to that.
Chief Ichesko, I think Chief Ichesko was able to get a couple of new hires, I'm not sure.
Yeah, he got us to 3 folks in just before I started.
So, but prior to that, for the 20 years prior to that, there basically was, the fire department was ignored. That's why there's been such an increase, because we're starting in the red, but I'm sorry, go ahead.
Would you say that louder? The fire department was ignored for 20 years before Chief Hood.
Ms. Smith?
Tell us a little bit about the current machinery equipment that we have and its expected lifetime and its replacement requirements.
Great question. So today at our fire station, we staff, and I'll talk fire apparatus first, we staff a fire engine, carries 1,000 gallons of water, And it's got a great complement of hoses and tools that we use on medical calls, we use on vehicle accidents, and we use on fires. That vehicle's a 2017 model year. We follow NFPA certificate, or NFPA requirements are really what drives the fire service. It's the National Fire Protection Association. They're consensus standards, they're updated often, and they recommend that our primary fire apparatus be in service for no more than 15 years, and then in reserve for no more than 10. We're in pretty good shape with our primary fire engine. Our primary water tank is a 2002 model year. It should have been placed in reserve several years ago. We're still running at primary. It's still in great shape, still works well. It does require more maintenance as it's an older vehicle. However, it's one major malfunction away from being out of service permanently. Much of the electrical components and many of the suspension components are obsolete. So once it's done, it's done.
Those are the only two vehicles that we have.
We have a backup fire engine, 2012 model year. That really doesn't meet our needs. It was purchased with an apartment, staffed 1 or 2 people, and it's only got 2 seats in it. So it really doesn't meet our needs, and it's pretty light on water. It's only got a 500-gallon water tank.
Did any previous board before you came set aside any funds for replacing of equipment?
The funding policy, to my understanding, was there was a budget and expenditures, and anything left over between the two would go into fire department fund balance, but there was no dedicated fund for vehicle or equipment replacement. I'm working to do that with this board. Mr. Reed?
I think I know the answer to this, but for everybody else here, do you bill for runs to fire, medical runs, vehicle accidents, anything?
No.
Why not?
Well, it's something else I looked at when we started here. There's a lot of cost recovery we can do. Car accidents, we can have a cost recovery ordinance, and insurance companies will pay for them. Fires, same way. Insurance companies just write checks. However, the big one comes, you have to have enough revenue to be able to have a private company do it. Primarily where that comes from is through EMS billing. I mentioned at the top of the meeting, I work for a transporting advanced life support department. Department over at 2 stations, protected 12 square miles, and right now they're staffing about 10 a day. But also providing transporting ambulance service. They brought in $600,000 to $800,000 last I knew each year. And that's where you can get a billing company involved, where they'll take the EMS revenue portion and then also add in your fires and your car accidents.
So they're looking to take a cut, basically.
Yeah.
And they have to make it worth their while.
Yeah, they gotta make it worth their while.
So how do we get people to do EMS?
Staffing. So get some more staffing. I'd like to get our rescue licensed. And I figure it's about 100 transports a year to make it worth our while, which then opens up all the other things we can go for as well and get some cost recovery back. Got you 1 second, man.
I want to put this in perspective. This is some analysis I did today. If you're in Ann Arbor schools, you're paying a total of 36.6 mils. If you're in Dexter, you're paying 35.26 mils. That's if you have 100% homestead exemption, okay? Of those roughly 36 mils, for Scio operating, they take 0.9104. That is 2.4% of your entire tax that you pay. So for every $1,000 of tax you pay, Scio Township gets $25. Okay, so that's to run the whole township. Fire separate, that's all operations in the township, including the sheriff, $25 per $1,000 of tax. This is why we're in this situation. The operating tax does not go up, 0.91. That's not going up. So your total amount contribution to the township is very, very small. So when you talk about an increase, I mean, most of it's going to the town, to the county, to schools.
Sheriff comes out of the jail.
And the sheriff, yeah, that's what I said, the sheriff comes out of the general, we pay that out of the general fund. So when you look at it that way, there's only a small fraction of your total taxes operate this township. In 2018, there was an advisory committee that went to the board with consultation with the fire department, and they said the millage for fire should be 1.95. 2018, that's the number they took to the board. Those board members cut it down to 1.35. They didn't look at any of the analysis. Their phrasing, and two of these people are some of the biggest supporters of vote no. They're the ones that did it. They said, we can't sell that as a millage. So we're not gonna go with what the fire department needs, 1.95, we're going with 1.35. So Chief, how much are you asking for next year?
Operating side, I believe the number that our accountants came up with was 1.4021.
He's not that far off. He's trying to make up personnel that have been denied over years. And he's trying to plan into the future for an additional fire station. That's the difference. So your total, if this passes, is what, 1.9?
Ballpark, yeah.
1.9, which is less than what was recommended to the prior board in 2018. Why don't we ask those board members why they're so anxious to tell people to vote no? And I say, what do you support? Do you support public schools? At least one person here had a big campaign about don't support public schools. Do you support public safety? That's what we're talking about. Do you support public roads? We all paid $85 for the past 10 years for roads.
And you're getting money back for that.
Do you support parks? Apparently we do, we voted for it. Do you support land preservation? Yes. So why would we not support public safety? I don't get it.
But adding to what Kathleen said, we did the 135, I was part of that board. We did the 135 in 2018, or actually it started in 2019. Prior to that, it was 0.9.
0.9.
0.9, but prior to implementing the 0.9, which I think was, I'm not sure what year that started. It all came out of the.
2010, I believe around 2010.
Yeah.
The cost of the fire department prior to the 0.9 came out of that $25 a thousand, came out of the operating, the general fund. So therein lies the problem, Mr. Boyle. We're starting 10 yards, 20 yards, 30 yards behind everybody else who's at the starting line. We're 50 yards behind the starting line to get going because we ignored them for so long.
I've done benchmark statistics, and I'm looking at the cost for our fire department per person, and I can give them to you.
Have you looked at other
Let me
fire
finish.
departments?
If you don't mind, I'd like to finish my sentence.
Sure. Just ask the question.
You know, I looked at local counties in Washtenaw County and local outside Washtenaw County. And the citizens per firefighter for Scio Township are 1,591. And for the average, it's 1,318.
Sorry,
So let me finish. So
can
that's a
you
little
explain your
behind.
number? I
Let
don't
me
know what it
finish.
is.
Let me finish. Now, if we go forward and assume the township, keep in mind the township's population has gone down by 10% in the last.
No, it has
10
not,
Yes,
sir.
it has.
No, it has not, sir.
Well, then you're arguing with this, with the Bureau of Statistics.
See,
gone down
Dexter was
because-
carved out of our population.
Well, that went to Dexter.
Right.
So it's gone down as far as responsibility for Scio Township is. That's what the statistics show, so that's what I'm gonna go with. So now, if we go through all these increases and we get to 45 firefighters, which Chief Hood has recommended.
No, it's inaccurate, sir.
It's not 45?
No. 33 is the number.
I read 45 in your write-up, by the way, I think. Well, I'll look that up.
The number's 33. I'd love to see where that's at, to make sure it's corrected if that exists elsewhere.
Your slide showing the population from 2000 to 2020. I think it went from 9,000 to 18,000.
Yep.
3,000 more residents coming in.
So in fact, our population hasn't really decreased, doubled in the last 12 years.
Well, I'll go with the 33. If we increase the population of the township, today it's 17,500. If we increase it by 1.5% over the next 10 years, which is the period we're looking at here, the township's population would be 19,700. That's a 1.5% increase in the population per year. If we have 33 firefighters, the number of citizens per firefighter is 600. Today it's 1,591, and the average for the surrounding townships and localities, including Ann Arbor City, Pittsfield, Superior Township, Ypsilanti City, Ypsilanti Township, is 1,318, okay? So now, if we go through with this increase and we assume the population goes up by 1.5% a year, we're at 438 citizens. And I did it with 33, Chief Andrew. I did it with 33 instead of 45. We're at 596 citizens per firefighter.
Where do you come
So,
up with
so
1.5%?
we are essentially, in terms of citizens per firefighter, we're competitive with the surrounding areas right now.
Chief Wood, can you bring up your statistics that show comparable municipalities, the number of fire stations, the amount of equipment?
Yeah, I think.
The number of fire people, you have that on the slide. So for example, Hamburg Township has 3 fire stations. That's one I remember.
I have, yeah, I need to find that for you.
Highland Township is comparable to Scio Township. It has the same taxable value. Pretty much, it has 19,000 residents. They have 3 stations and 50 to 60 firefighters.
Which township?
Highland Town, or, not Highland, yes, Highland Township,
What's with 59?
off of 59, yes. And this was verified by Chief Nicholas George. Verified.
Well, the municipalities that I picked out for comparison were provided on the Scio Township website. And that was the basis for my analysis. And it included Ann Arbor City, Pittsfield Township, Superior Township, Ypsilanti City, Ypsilanti Township, Commerce Township, Harrison Township, Northfield Township, Summit Township. And the average for those communities was 1,318 citizens per firefighter. And the average, and Scio's Township is 1,591 citizens per firefighter.
So this is comparison you're looking for. This is something I did for the board, and it may have.
Right, does this have number of stations, number of?
Yep, it's tough to read, but if you look at that, there's the community on the far left. The second number is roughly population, followed by taxable value, followed by square miles protected,
Yeah.
followed by fire stations, The double number there, if you see Scio was 9.3, that's 9 full-time, 3 paid on call staff. Budget, and then service provided.
This is exactly what I was looking for. Pittsfield Township. 27 firefighters, 3 stations.
Is that 24, is that their square miles covered?
Which number?
Pittsfield Township, I have their population at 37,100, is that what's on?
Is that
I got them at 39,000, I got, 27 square miles, 3 fire
I had
stations.
37,100, Andrew,
It's close.
and I have 16 firefighters, which means you have 1,427 citizens per firefighter.
No, his number is 27 firefighters.
No, 27 square miles, 24 on shift.
Oh, gotcha. That's still,
Okay.
you're not comparing the
Yeah.
same statistics.
Well, the difference
I'm
between
sorry.
26 and
About
27.
20,
No, the
32.
difference between 16
32.
you said and 24.
Wait, you're saying Pittsfield Township has 16 firefighters?
No, 24.
24.
I said they had 26.
I excluded administrative
No, I
staff.
said 26.
I excluded administrative as staff, that's just the response. I excluded administrative staff in this, this concern.
This is just firefighters.
Ma'am, you had a question, I apologize.
Anyway, I had 26. What did you have, Andrew?
24.
24. Well, we could do it for 24 and it would be a little bit higher, but not much.
Is there a national
Now,
average?
well, by the way, I had 11 for Scio.
We've got 9.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's just yeah, we're not talking apples to apples.
Is there a national average? Or a
No.
suggested average by firefighter association?
No, NFPA doesn't give a number per.
I would like to ask a question.
Please, ma'am, I apologize.
It's okay, it's okay, I know. So I know that I keep hearing that we don't have that many firefighters. And that we're losing some. And I'm just curious, I know that this is probably something that is reflected across the country, I'm not sure, but I have a feeling that people are struggling with some of these same issues.
Yes.
And I'm wondering do you think that part of Scio Township's problem with that, is it that less people are being trained and being recruited more heavily? Or is it that we're not competitive enough with pay?
Yeah, how
So-
realistic are your projections? In terms of numbers of firefighters, how realistic, given the employment situation in the country?
It's gonna be a struggle to get to 33. That's why I think it's gonna take it 10 years, honestly. I will say, paid on call firefighters nationally, there's so many less. Where you tend to see more paid on call departments are many more of your rural communities where the labor force is different. Here in Scio, we're fortunate to have a very educated populace, and they tend to have less labor intensive jobs. So they're less apt, at least in my experience, to want to be volunteer firefighters. So I think that's one component. We actually have a gentleman here who was one of the founding members of the department. And back in his day, we had probably 27 firefighters, right? All volunteer. Today we're struggling to keep 3 on the department. As to full-time staff, I really think there's a couple components that help maintain your existing staff. Competitive pay, I think is definitely one, but also I think a work environment is one as well. If you give the guys a reason to want to come to work because it's a good environment, it's a well-trained department that work well together, they enjoy coming to work more, they're more apt to stay. And if you pay them decent, they're gonna stay as well. I think those are 2 key measures of success.
And I'm just gonna sneak this in too. So with that statement, as far as the work environment. So how long have you been fire chief? I don't know.
About 3.5 years.
Okay. Do you see something that could be remedied? Something that could make that situation improved? Make it more attractive? He has.
So I'll say, I don't wanna speak for the firefighters. But I think, one of the things I bring to the department, and this is something that I did in my previous place of employment as well. But on my shift level, my previous employment, I think, working together with the guys, training with the guys, appreciating their input and helping build that team is one of those things. I think that's a skill I bring, and I hope the guys would say the same. But yeah, I think that's something that we're definitely fostering here inside.
Could I add to that, please?
Yeah.
Trustee Jillian Carey. So I got involved with the township because of a lot of issues. Garbage was one of them that got me involved. And then it was brought to my attention about the fire department. And I went over there a few times, and if you would have seen the station, it was literally falling apart. The big doors were coming off the walls. They were living in mold. The sergeant or the sheriff part of the building, there's Lieutenant King, Lisa, couldn't even go into that building because it made her sick. I was in there right after a rain. They had telephone, or not telephone books, you know, the paper for computers, computer paper, 500, they would shove them up against the outlets because to absorb the water. It was awful. So there was a special board meeting with the previous board. I went over there with a couple of residents to show them. And I brought back a vent, a cold vent. It was full of, it looked like it was a dead animal. I gave it to the board. I said, this is ridiculous that they're working and living in this. They said, oh, they just need to change the filter. I said, they did last month, and this is how it is. So starting with voicing to the board over and over again, we need to do something about this building. And then our chief Furge had left, and we had an interim, and that's when the 1.65 or the 1.35 would happen, which hardly did anything except to remodel the building. And that was only after we were on the board about this. Chief Hood came in, and I'm talking to the fire department, firefighters, and their morale was so low. It was terrible. I can tell you now that they love to come into work, and Chief Hood is the one that turned everything around.
Yay.
Don't disagree with anything. It was a mess.
Thank you.
And it shouldn't probably have broken away from Dexter in the first place. I don't know how all that happened, but
It should have been maintained all
I'm
along.
surprised it lasted as long as it did. It's downward trajectory. So I basically left in 90 when Chief Dane basically left. I was brought in because of Chief Dane. We had mutual friends from East Coast and Shreveport, whatever, in the community, fire community. So it doesn't surprise me. We were treading water at best. And so to cap,
In 1990, you were treading water?
yeah, here,
Jesus.
Jesus,
Yeah.
absolutely.
that's 30 years.
When we started up the department, it was way underfunded then, with no plan, no vision. Just some of the things are the same, water delivery, dry hydrants, hose tank, whatever, ladder truck. I was surprised that we've been existing without a ladder truck, given the commercial properties that were, and they're expensive.
And the large residentials.
And larger residentials as well, hitting them from the street just because they're only 2.5 stories. If you can't get closer than 70 feet.
Less your way.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, off track. The point is, we're in a deep hole. We got that. We're in a deep hole. I think you raised a question. I shared exactly that same question. Given the track record of how, not certainly your chief, or the current contingent of officers that we have, the hole is so deep. The track record of the board managing, mismanaging the funds, the creative financing that was being done as late as last March, some internal loan, which prevented you from paying personnel expenses, salary expenses, if I remember the situation. On God's earth, why would I trust this board to handle such large sums, even if we're half off?
Because we have a
John.
new board now.
Well, it is not showing that, it's not evident in the plan that's being laid out. I would
Still
think
fairly new.
it looks like,
Earmarked and.
it looks like if we spend 10% of the effort that we seem to have done into this creative financing mechanisms
You're right.
on the fire department strategy and plan, we'd be a hell of a lot better off.
Yeah,
For
of
the
course.
record, Treasurer Palmer is not running for reelection.
Well, good.
That is part of the problem.
Yeah. Has been, but let's,
That's personal opinion.
so the question is, how fast can you dig out of a hole? Really? I mean,
How big a shovel?
Thank you.
That's true.
is the
That's
shovel
true,
not big
yeah.
enough? It's part of
We
the
would
problem.
not put up with the schools falling apart like this. And we put money into the education of $1 billion. Yeah, I have no kids, but I still put, my taxes go to the schools and to educating them. And I tell myself, I want educated people living in the area, so I want these kids to get a good education. But I'm pretty sure at some point I'm gonna need some medical care. You might have a heart attack. Do you want them there in 6 minutes or 10 minutes or 20 minutes?
Yeah.
You want them there sooner. I worked 43 years. I just retired from U of M, working in medicine. You want them there in 6 minutes or less.
Yeah.
When your family is pumping on your chest, you're sweating bullets, looking out the door for that fire truck to show up. And for anybody to say, that's enough money for you, you don't need any more money, when it's gonna cost you a couple $100 a year, you should be ashamed that you're even here discussing this and telling us we should be voting no. Everybody should support
Yeah,
the
I don't
fire
agree.
department.
I don't agree with that for.
Wait, hold
Oh,
on.
no,
hold
no,
on.
no.
I support the fire department.
Yeah.
I support first responders.
Not if you
I
don't.
come from a family of military people. My parents were FBI agents. I support them. It's a question of how much support and how fast. You know, is it 2.3 meals or could we get by on something less? That's the question. Just because you say you support it, doesn't mean that there's unlimited funds available for that support.
We've tried to
Okay.
get by for years.
What?
We've tried to get by on 1.35. We need to support them in order to.
Do we need a 230% increase? That's the question before us. Do we need to go up by 233% or 238%? That's the question. Or is there something less that might make sense? The fact that you say we need to go in a certain direction doesn't mean that the funds to get there is unlimited.
So we have a lot of folks online on Zoom. If it's okay, I'd like to start, see if they have any specific questions they'd like to ask me too. And I see there's obviously gonna be some disagreement here as I would expect, which is fair and fine. But I'd like to see if there's folks online that have specific questions related to this that we could answer, and then we could end the meeting and finish some of these other debates. If that's okay.
20 people, oh boy, yeah.
Terry, can you see if there's anyone who would like?
We have one hand up right now, Rob Pattinson. Rob, you can go ahead. Oh, we can't hear you, Rob.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. Change the settings. Chief, can you explain to us how the ISO rating? Until they stop speaking.
If I understood your question, can I explain how the ISO rating works? Is that right, sir?
Yes, and here's what I need to understand. Is the ISO rating, is it a township-wide score that the insurance uses? Or is that ISO rating related to each individual address? And that's how the ISO rating impacts our insurance.
The latter.
Boy, how do I answer this easily? So ISO evaluates our dispatch center, evaluates our fire department, evaluates our water supply, and then assigns a score. That score varies a little bit based on whether or not you have municipal water versus no municipal water. And then lastly, if you're more than 5 road miles from a fire station. That being said, in general, anyone that's closer than 5 road miles to a fire station has a similar rating. It's just phrased a little bit differently in the report.
So basically, what I understand there is that it's a little bit of both, and that everyone in the township is going to benefit from our fire department having a better ISO score.
No, that's the point. The answer is no to that.
Elaborate
Because
a little bit.
there's the ISO rating for the folks that are in the hydrogen areas. That's totally different than the people who are not covered by the hydrogen areas. And so as an example, I said, I don't know when you came on, I'm in a very northeast corner. I have a 10+ ISO rating. So I'm paying the worst in terms of the rate for my hazard insurance. It's due not just to the road miles, but to the access to water.
Ability to get water. Yep.
Ability to get water. So the town has to demonstrate that it can deliver water at a certain rate within a certain amount of time. And that's done by having manpower, water on tankers, hydrogen strategies for refilling and doing shuttles for tankers. And all of those will improve ISO ratings in the areas that are not currently covered by hydrants. And
yes,
the plan has to address that, target that reasonably for me to be able to see any benefit out of any of this, as an example. So if I want to be selfish about it and knowing what I know, I'm not going to benefit from this until the town is held to targets for improvement of the ISO ratings in those outlying areas. And it can be done. It can be done. So I'm said my piece on that.
But by reflecting your words right back to you, sir, I don't know your name. My name is Rob Pattinson, by the way. Scott, good to meet you. What you just said was that the ISO rating is related to manpower, equipment, and the plan. And we have proposed more manpower, more equipment. Won't that lower your insurance because of the increased manpower, equipment, and plan?
No, for a variety of reasons. It's the water component of that. So if I have 100 people, but I don't have a water strategy, it won't affect it. If I have 3 tankers, each with 4,000 gallons, and I don't have manpower, it's not going to affect that. So my personal belief is that the plan is understaffed still. That's my personal belief. And so my whole point is the timeline to get to benefits for the town. Right now, our emergency medical, okay, given that everybody's got some human resource issues and staffing up, HVA does a fine job. And we're okay on the I suggest that we separate the EMS piece out from the basic firefighting and response. So to improve, so if I'm going to pay $500 more a year, maybe in the first year, I can save that if I can achieve a better ISO rating in my house. I was told that by my insurance company.
The heart attack victim ambulance come from 2 weeks ago.
which,
The one in my neighborhood.
that was a Jackson County ambulance that.
Yep, that was the closest one at that time.
Jackson County
Yes.
For what?
for a heart attack?
Correct, a cardiac arrest.
Now their rig was JCA, but they didn't respond from Jackson County.
Yeah, they left the hospital, they were on the way back, and that was the closest one that they could send.
And how far out was that from like time you got there?
So fortunately, we had 4 folks on duty plus the assistant chief in the station. I was actually over by the Menards coming back from, but I arrived basically from the Menards area up to this address, which is right around the corner here, about the same time as the ambulance. However, we did have 5 guys on scene, and bystander CPR was going on. So my understanding was a pretty successful outcome.
But aside from that, Huron Valley Ambulance isn't always available because they're short-staffed as well.
That's correct. There's a lot of calls that go out where ambulance is delayed or still trying to find one. To touch on that point, Speaking of that specific incident, we were tied up for about 45 minutes on that cardiac arrest. In that time, we got 2 other medical calls. Mutual aid from fire departments. I don't know what happened with the first one. The second one, we had just got return of circulation, so we're preparing the person to transport to the hospital, and we send fire staff to help there too. But we're able to break an engine free and go relieve the second call. They were on scene about 10 minutes before they even got an ambulance dispatched. So 20 minutes after calling 911, they finally got one dispatched to that call.
I'll go back to something I said way earlier, which is we got to understand where HVA is at this point. It's pure and simple. It's like any other service, whether it's GFL and rubbish or whatever it is. I got to understand what I've got them committed to and why we're not performing.
I hope well, we don't have any performance-based standards for them anywhere. I hope that they're on the upswing and they're hiring paramedics, and 5 years from now, we can say, hey, look, we got it covered. We don't need this EMS component anymore, the transport. I don't know though. I don't have a crystal ball.
I think exactly. So somebody, I don't know who has supposed to have the responsibility of the contract with HVA? Who's
There's no contract anywhere for HVA. None. Anywhere.
County Medical Board probably would be the ultimate responsible, not even them.
They guide treatment protocols.
Other than that, they have no control.
It's unusual.
Well, there's part of the problem, but you know.
May I share an opinion about the EMS versus the fire department responding?
Please, Mr. Pattinson.
So I've heard this argument several times that EMS is our primary requirement. Unfortunately, we don't have a time warp machine where our firefighters can get a call that there's a problem. They can enter a time warp machine, they can go forward in time, figure out what the problem is, and then go backwards in time and then respond with the appropriate equipment. The point is that when an emergency call comes in, they need to send all available and necessary equipment. And if that involves a fire truck with firefighters, that's just as important as sending an ambulance. And it's that Monday morning quarterbacking of looking back and saying, okay, we've got 500 EMS calls and 54 fire calls, so therefore we need more EMS. They don't know that until after the event is over. For instance, when mom fell and broke her hip in 2019, I called 911, and the Scio Township Fire Department was here and helping mom and stabilizing her before I got off the phone with 911. HVA took several minutes to respond and ultimately transport her, but it was the Scio Township Fire Department that made mom safe and ready for transport.
But that's our standard procedure. It always has been.
Just as an aside to touch on that point, there are several advanced techniques we can do now that typically were only paramedic skills, but are now allowed by basics. So our firefighters are able to place an advanced airway to control an airway and provide breath to a person. Several medications we give: Narcan to counteract overdoses, epinephrine for allergic reactions. We're giving albuterol breathing treatments to help trouble breathing patients. We have aspirin. So we're taking over already as at the EMT level a lot of the advanced skills. There's still many cardiac meds, and we don't have narcotics and things like that, but you know, we've got a lot more life-saving medications we can give.
And we can get into portable cardiac units. They don't have to go with the patient. That could all get transferred to HVA once they get on the scene. Yes, those are things we can do. That's the standard procedure. That's kind of the limit. But yeah, we're still 90% plus of our calls is still medical.
50 roughly.
We showed on the chart, you had 54 medical calls, 1,400 calls altogether.
Yeah, when I ran the data for last year, 47% medical, and hazardous conditions, fires, car accidents, we carved out of that. So it's roughly 50-50.
Right.
So 50-50 straight medical, 50-50 rescue / fire.
Okay.
there anyone else online that has questions?
We have a question that's come in. It says, based on your goal of 90% 6-minute or less response time, does the desired location in the southeast corner of the township achieve this? Have you projected response time changes based on an additional station?
Chief, could you repeat? We couldn't hear back.
I'll paraphrase, based on our objective of 90% 6-minute response times and that station location, how well do we do? And have we projected what that might be? I will say the location's not ideal. If I had another mile to go, I'd be happier. But we're limited by the property we have available.
Well, we shouldn't be, but that's a whole different discussion, I think. But the response time, let's take another example to the north, off of Miller, East Delhi, north of, on East Delhi, off of Miller. You're not gonna hit that. In fact, you're 5.5 miles midpoint on East Delhi from a new projected fire station location.
Let me finish that question. 40% of our calls are within that response zone that we covered primarily by the Wagner Road Station. And I think we can get about a 4-minute lower response time there. So I think we're right on that threshold of meeting 6 minutes, 90% of the time.
Have to demonstrate that.
Yeah. And to your point, you're absolutely right. We get a section of Scio Township, northeast section, that we can't make to in 15 minutes. It's absolutely accurate. We're limited by roads, we're limited by terrain, we're limited by bridges that exist in the township that we can't drive over.
Chief Wood, can I ask a question? There's been comments about the number of firefighters per population. Is that a fair assessment? It seems like you should be looking at the number of firefighters per structure and the age of the population. So I'm challenging Mr. Boyd's statistics that should it be per, how many people do you have? How many firefighters do you have? How about how many buildings do you have to protect? And how many firefighters do you have?
From my understanding, that is something that used to be a SEMCOG talking point. It doesn't appear in any consensus standard, nor does it appear anywhere that I can really find anymore. It used to be lore that I've heard. What I will say is we base this on national consensus standards, getting at least 4 people to an emergency in under 6 minutes. 90% of the time.
Chief?
Yeah.
So, one of the benefits that I see of the new fire station is all the development to the western portion of the township that will include a retirement center. And as we all know, retirement centers require, once they're up and running, about a call a day. So
I can touch on that point real quick. I took data from Chelsea with Chelsea Retirement Community, and they average, gosh, don't quote me on this, but I think he said 3/4 of a call per unit per year. So I figured we'd 200 units. We're looking at another 200, 250 calls.
but we also have a large development on Jackson Road that is in the process of being built. So we're really going to increase at about the same time, if we get this passed, the station would be up and running. So if we have the increased calls on the west side of the township, we really do need to have our own backup.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, yeah, we're gonna be busier, more development generally equals more calls.
Or you have a new understanding with HVA, as they are informed with our growth patterns.
But
It's not a zero-sum game.
We can't depend on them.
I don't agree with that at all. We need to depend on them. We need to manage the relationship with them, and I have heard no evidence whatsoever from anybody that suggests with attempting to do that.
They've come to the board meetings and talked to the board.
We have a great relationship with HVA.
Who's responsible for it?
We have a great relationship with them. We work well with them. Their paramedics work well with our firefighters, and we work together for the patient outcome. I can't
So,
control their staffing.
so we have to inform them, you know, somehow, whether it's
Well, they're being
the
informed.
formal path or not, of what our development plans are that are going out to Jackson Carter. How much of that is gonna be, care versus normal residential development? Do they know that now? Okay, so.
Talk with their staff.
Okay, so then we should, so then we have to understand what commitments we need from them. You're not gonna be able to run that with one bus. And then when the one bus runs, it's gonna take 3 firefighters out of this. And even if we get to your plan, Max, we've already taken out 20-something% of the available firefighters for the next incident. So that's not a workable plan either. It's a combination of the two. Strategy and the plan has to be well articulated and the relationship well managed. And I applaud you if you're going above and beyond and helping and trying to manage that relationship with them.
Absolutely.
But somebody needs to be in charge of what the heck the commitment is with them and from them, what we're expecting from them.
Maybe there's an idea, it's totally off base, but we could have HBA come to a board meeting. And try to be nice to them at first, but at least open the conversation.
I'm happy to reach out to them for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, no worries. Terry, was there any other questions online?
Rob has his hand up again. Rob, are you there?
Yeah, so one more question, Chief.
Please.
Could you tell us more about the real world numbers that we're going to have for 2024? You sent out the mailing last week about hiring 3 new firefighters so that we're finally at a safe staffing level of 2 in, 2 out. Placing a deposit on a new water tanker, $400,000. The normal 9 months operating expenditures, building funds, the funding the first year of the fire department capital plan, which is finally forward looking at $300,000. And then from the capital assessment mills, placing deposits on a new ladder truck, finally. And in terms of the ladder truck, the Planning Commission PUD, public benefit aspect of that, is going to have a lot of contributions towards that ladder truck to offset the cost to the taxpayer for that new ladder truck. And then point 6 is funding the draft construction for the new fire department of $400,000. Can you tell us, you went into great detail in that mailing, and can you talk more about that in terms of what that 1.9 mils for 2024 is going to do for us in terms of real world numbers instead of some of John Boyle's estimated numbers?
I think I understand your question. If I get off base, jump back in, please. But yeah, basically, I sat down with the plant Moran Gap folks, it's our contracted accountants, and said, here, this is really what I'd like to start funding. And you mentioned starting to put money aside for capital replacement. We have a capital improvement plan that's been adopted by the board. We've yet to fund it. It's going to take some money up front to get that funded, but then every year, you know, I know that I've got, for example, this one tool cost me $15,000 and I need to replace it every 15 years. So every year I'm going to put $1,000 away towards that tool. And we build that out for all of our capital purchases. So over time, when that tool is 15 years old and it's time to replace it, we've got the funds saved to do so. Same with apparatus, same with our breathing air packs, the packs the firefighters wear to, so if they have fresh air when they're working, things of that nature. Yeah, we're looking to get to 3/4 of a year fund balance, so that we have operating money throughout the year until taxes come in. Our objective is, and the 0.5 for the capital millage is, or assessment is my best estimate right now. But you know, we'd spend some money to pay for plans for the architect to draw for a building. And I need to note that what we presented earlier was our first shot at it. I've already looked at that and found ways we can tighten that up and shrink that building some. That's not a problem, so that cost is gonna go down. And I don't know what we need for deposits for our vehicles yet, because we don't actually know how much they cost. So I'm ballparking $400,000 for those as well. But if this were all to come to fruition, I see hiring 3 people, that's real world responders on the ground to help the residents. That's saving for the future and getting us where we should be policy wise with fund balance. So does that answer your question, sir?
More than answers it. Thank you very much, Chief. Going from 1.35 mils, if it doesn't pass, to 1.9 mils will cost our family $73 in 2024. Now, granted, we're at the lower end of the taxable value because we've been here for a very long time, but that's a real world number that is not hundreds and not thousands of dollars as the fear campaign has put out there to scare residents. And I appreciate you putting that into real numbers and getting that out before the election. I think that was perfect timing, and thank you for making sure that all that information was clearly put out in your mailing.
Yep, I do have if anyone wants to reach out to me, I built a spreadsheet calculator where you can go online, put in your taxable value, and it'll tell you exactly what will be next year and the theoretical maximum, just so folks know. I think that's fair to tell everybody.
Next up is Jonathan. Jonathan, you can go ahead.
Hey, thanks. I just want to make a quick points. First of all, presentation, quick and point without deep dives into rabbit holes. Appreciated. Well done. I think when you start making estimates, they're only as good as the data that fuels them. And when you're using extended lists of numbers to come up with a conclusion, a small mistake at the beginning can have a significant impact to the numbers at the end of that calculations or estimate. And so when you use the number 11 firefighters instead of 9 for the base number for Scio, that's going to throw all of your initial numbers off by 20%. You multiply it, maybe 200%, maybe 400%. We don't know. All we do know from experience working with data and numbers is that when you use estimates and multiply them through long chains, they end up being either very, very large errors. To whom out using the numbers of 200 for 300% or whatever, please stop doing that. There's been some information around this campaign. I'm sure the results were not. The other thing, there's something that Chief Hood said here today, building teams, creating a work environment people like. I think that's so completely undervalued in our society. As another manager who also like that, I can commend him in doing what he can, not only hiring the best, but to hang on to them, because once you train someone, once you put time and investment into somebody, replacing them is an incredibly costly event. And so Chief Hood's approach to building environment work is far society, and he should be applauded for that. And quite frankly, he says, as responsible as he's been for 3.5 years, if he says I need more money, I don't even know why we're talking about it. It just should be automatic. We spend so much money on parks and pathways. Why can't we spend it on the most basic essentials here? Like, more fire service for a growing community. Thank you. Have a great night, and well done, Chief.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Any other questions? Well, I'd really like to thank everybody, both here and online. I appreciate folks coming out. And I'm going to be here for a while after. If anyone's got questions they still want to ask and chat, or look at my online estimator. And thank you folks online for being here tonight as well.
Thank you, Chief. Well done.
Thank you.